What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Object-Oriented Design Workshop. I am Richie Nunez. I am the Events and Media Coordinator here at Alco. The very first thing actually that we're going to do is launch a poll. If you'd like to apply to join our exclusive Alco Slack community that consists of job-seeking software engineers, please select yes on that poll and we'll go ahead and send you some more information. First things first, we're going to go over the event overview. We're just going to do a quick welcome and an introduction to Outco, to myself and to Brandon, which will take about 5 minutes. And then we're going to jump right into the object-oriented design workshop with Brandon for about 45 minutes. And then we're going to have a quick Q&A at the end for about 10 minutes. For those that don't know, Outco was founded in 2015 in San Francisco, and essentially what we are is a coaching and skill sharpening service. We've helped place over 2,000 job-seeking software engineers in their dream roles. And if you're interested, we have classes in Eastern Standard Time and Pacific Standard Time as well. And actually, what I'm going to do now is stop this first poll and launch our last poll of the evening. If you find value in this demo, you want to learn more about Alco, please join us for a live Alco info session at one of the selections there. I'm Richie Nunez. I'm the Alco Events and Media Coordinator. I'm also the Alco Alumni Community Manager. I've managed over 50 events for Alco having to do with software engineering negotiation, resume optimization, whiteboarding, etc. And I'm going to let Brandon introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Richie. My name is Brandon. So I've been a full stack software engineer for about 6 years now. I've been in various different industries, ranging from healthcare to crypto to now working at a startup that's focusing on bringing the automotive industry up to date, as well as being a technical instructor and coach here at Alco. So looking forward to just sharing knowledge and continuously learning along the way.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Brandon. And without any further ado, we're going to jump right into the object-oriented design workshop. Brandon, I'll let you take it away.
Yep, sounds good. Okay, really quickly. Yeah, so this is, we'll start at the basic here. What is the object-oriented design interview? This is more or less aimed towards like senior level, higher level, but it can also be, a type of interview question given to like an entry level or junior level applicant as well. So the whole process and point of an OOD interview is to see if someone gives you a generic and vague prompt. So for instance, like, build Facebook or build Twitter. Are you able to, one, identify objects in the system? So you would need to, somehow scope this large, vague, prompt or question and kind of focus on like a set of use cases. And then from there, do you have an understanding of the relationship between these different entities and these different objects? So that's the main like meat of the process of the OOD interview. So this is, some people will ask, well, what's the difference between OOD and like a system design interview? And the main kind of key points to look for is if you start hearing numbers like, latency and, we need 2 million requests, per minute or per second or whatever, and you start giving you those kind of like constraints and they start talking about scalability, then that's like a system design interview. But if they're more or less just like, hey, let's design, X application, you just need to keep asking more questions and ask if there's any constraints or scalabilities. And if they say no, then you know that you're in an object-oriented design interview. So for today, we're actually going to design Amazon. And again, very vague, right? Amazon has a lot of different pieces and there's a lot to Amazon's websites and their services. So our first step is, again, use cases. So I always like to kind of set aside about 5 to 10 minutes for this first part. If it's like a 45-minute to an hour interview, you don't want to spend too much time here because you really only want to go through and highlight the use cases that you will have actual time to, diagram out. So for instance, you can kind of think of it as like an MVP, right? So a minimum viable product. So what do we need to kind of just, get a usable product out there? So we obviously want to be able to add items to a cart, right? And then And again, this whole process is really meant as like a dialogue. It's really, no one person should be quiet throughout the whole interview. This is just like it's meant to be a dialogue between you and your interviewer. Ask a lot of questions and kind of pick your brain and see how well you are at, scoping these problems out. So we want to, add items to a cart. And another great way to kind of go through use cases is in your mind to think of like the happy path, right? So think about if you're not familiar with whatever application that they're asking you, then maybe talk with them and walk through, what a typical user would experience at whatever application or website that they are having you design. So for us, we started with add items to a cart, but if we wanted to go down the happy path, we would say, user should be able to search for an item, right? So we will move these around here. And again, this is just a really easy way to kind of get a quick set of use cases here. So we say, users should be able to search for an item as well as add items to a cart. 3, we should be able to modify the items in their cart. And then 4, add, shipping info. 5, add, we'll call it payment. We'll call it payment info because this could actually be of 2 things, right? You can either have some type of like bank account connected to Amazon or a credit card. And then you would select your shipping preference, right? And then 7, so this is really where I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here. So normally in the OOD kind of interview, you're not going to have too many constraints, but it's definitely something you should always ask. So say, with Amazon specifically, it's an e-commerce site, but they do have a major difference than other e-commerce sites, which is you actually need to be a registered user to check out. So this is kind of a big piece of information that we don't want to overlook here, right? So 7 is, if user is a member, check out items in their cart. Okay, so this is, a very simple happy path, of an Amazon or of a typical user, using Amazon's website. So here's some other things to also kind of look out for. Amazon offers a lot of different, pieces in their site. So they have, their like recommended items, like whenever you purchase something and it'll have like people also bought this. And so, that's like a nice to have, but we'll add that down, right? So recommended items, send a gift to someone. Let's see what else. Like maybe we definitely want to be able to add a product, right, for sale. So we got to think about it from the other perspective, not just the buyer, but also the sellers. So add a product. We need to be able to maybe contact customer support. And then let's see, what's some other good ones? So add a product, be able to, we'll just say remove a product, since you always need to have opposite, as well as add a product category, right? Because every product is going to belong to some type of category. Let's think of another kind of nice to have, maybe reviews, very important. That's, you know, one of their main selling points. And let's see, we'll do one more. We'll do, let's see, view order history. Okay, so now that we have our list of use cases, and we're about, you know, that 5-minute mark or so, now we want to highlight the ones that we're actually going to prioritize and kind of establish what our MVP would be. So we're going to do obviously everything in this list, right? This was our happy path. These are at minimum. We want to keep these. The recommended items, it's a great feature. It's not something that we're going to focus on right now for the allotted time that we have. So we're going to skip that one. Send gift, again, it's not, you know, a core feature. So we can kind of gloss over that. Now, these other ones, add a product, right? Contact customer service, remove a product, product category reviews, review order history. These are all very important. And this is all kind of completes the full picture of what an Amazon system and experience would be. So once you have your use cases, then you want to define what your actors are and also what your classes are. So for actors, if we go back to our use cases, we have, you know, users should be able to search for an item, add items to a cart. I'm actually going to add another one. We're going to say register for an account. This is obviously a very important one as well. But really quickly, so we have users should be able to buy an item. Okay, so we have some sort of customer, right? And we can kind of put, you know, a buyer. We also said that you can also, you know, add a product. We were talking about from the seller's perspective. So we need to have a seller, right? And the seller can also be a customer as well. So we have different types of customers. We mentioned this customer support. So there's some type of support, some type of hierarchy. Somebody's going to be able to, you know, keep track of customers as well as keep in order, you know, the certain items that are being, you know, placed on for sale. So we're just going to call that an admin, right? And then from here, what else do we have? So we have this really important piece of information up here. You need to be registered user to check out. So in order to be a buyer, right, you need to have a registered account. You need to be a member. So what we're going to say is we have some type of guest account, right? And this is important as well. Let's see. So we have some guests, right? And the guests will be able to pretty much do everything that the customer can do except for checkout. So a guest can search, a guest can add items to the cart. The guest will just not be able to complete the checkout flow. Okay. And then, so we have, so far, you know, this is a good amount of actors in our system so far. And one that I do want to mention that we didn't write a use case for, but some type of notifications, right? We want to know when our packages are being delivered. We want to know the statuses. So we'll put a little asterisk there. So if we have time, we will dive into that section as well. So again, you can get a lot of information out of just drawing out these use cases. And we probably spent about 5 minutes or so just on this particular, closer to 10 now. But so now if we look at our classes, okay, we talked about, we obviously have some type of shopping cart, right? We are going to have some type of payment. We're going to have a user, right? Maybe an admin. Let's see what else we have. So we have shipping, checkout, reviews. You know, we can say if we want to make it a whole class for reviews. Probably not. You know, reviews are tied to a certain product. So maybe we'll do a product class, and then let's see what else here. Product category. And again, we're kind of doing this process. We're just breaking down each step to help us with the second part, which is going to be actually diagramming everything. So, you know, the more you can kind of extrapolate information at each step, the easier it will be to put it all together in your diagram. So we have some product category. We're going to have some type of shipment class, right? Like we talked about when something gets delivered. Another one, we talked about order history down here at number 15. So there's going to be some type of orders, right? And yeah, so this is a good starting point. We have enough to kind of keep moving to the second part. And really quickly, if you do have any questions along the way, I will be taking, you know, some brief breaks. Feel free to throw them in the Q&A section, or I'll also be checking the chat. So really quickly, see if there's anything. Cool, nothing yet. Awesome. So now we have our use cases, we have actors, we have a set of classes to help get us started. So coming off of here, we have shopping cart. I think user is probably the most important one to get started with, since everything is, you know, tied to around if you're a user or not. So let's create this. We're going to call it an account class. And this account class is going to have, you know, basic information. It's going to have, you know, username, right? We're going to have some type of encrypted or salted password here. So don't worry about encryption. That's another maybe a caveat, depending on your particular role. You know, if it's primarily a, you know, if it's like some type of logging in like role or some type of authentication role, then you want to spend a lot of time on like that particular flow. Primarily though, when you're talking about a whole system, you can kind of just assume the authentication is, you know, taken care of for you, as well as the username password. So username password, we have some type of account status, right? And this is where you're going to want to start using some of your object-oriented like programming concepts in general. So if we want to set list of types of statuses, not just any type of string can be put in here, then we would create some type of enum, right? And maybe we'll call it account statuses. We'll call this whatever, account status. And for different account statuses, we can have, you know, active, maybe blocked, because we have this admin, right? You could have, you know, maybe just like completely bland or banned, you're not even blocked, etc. Right? So you can have a list of different account statuses. Cool. And we're just going to keep going down the line. So we really want to just keep it simple and keep moving forward here. So we have status, you know, you're going to have some type of name. You're going to have an address, right? And again, you can create a data type. Maybe just call it address. And what this is going to consist of is, right, your street name or the street address. You're going to have your city, zip code, state, country. And there's more than one way to do something. This is just, if you're trying to get fancy and really want to flex those OOP concepts. So we're gonna have an address that's a type. We can even call this maybe like shipping address of type address. And then we can have, your email, as well as a phone number. So basic account information, right? So this is what we're having here. And we'll have some other properties as well, but this is just kind of the core information that we care about at this moment. Okay, so now we have our properties at the top. Below, we're going to start defining some methods that would be in this class as well. So we could do, if we're following proper OOP design and concepts, then these would be private properties. So you have your getters and setters. So you could do get shipping address, right? Every account you can also implement some type of review. So maybe you can do like add product review, which would take a product, right? Oops. And you can also do, maybe just adding a product. Because again, right, these can be sellers, buyers. You can have even type. We could throw another property on there for the type of account that this is. So yeah, very, very high level, nothing too crazy here. So we have this account class. And the reason why we're kind of extrapolating this account class is because I'll show you in a second here. So we talked about, we have a guest, right? And we said we have a registered member, so we'll call it a member. And we have this admin, right? So if we go back to our actors, we had this customer that could be of different types. We have an admin and guest. Now, the reason why I'm going to separate member and customer is because of what we talked about in the beginning when we said that a guest can basically do everything that a member can. The only thing it cannot do is actually check out whatever items are in the cart. So to avoid duplicating, the shopping cart logic in each one of these classes, we are instead going to create this customer class. Let me just throw that here. And with this customer class is guest and member are going to extend these customer classes. So for a customer, all you really care about is get shopping cart, right? So that's what we said was the commonality between guest and member was they share a shopping cart and being able to modify this shopping cart. Oops. So now we have this guest, and all they is going to have some register, right? Now I've done, this is very similar to what we teach in the actual Alco, and people ask me, well, why don't we just, create like an anonymous account, or, why are we extrapolating this so much? And the main argument is whenever we have a guest, right, a lot of this account information doesn't matter to the guest, right? It's anonymous, so we don't have any information on this user. So it would just be empty objects that are getting created, and it's just not very efficient. So we want to make sure that we are only instantiating these account instances whenever we have an actual member and where the information can actually get filled. So instead, what we will say is that guest will extend customer. So now we have this, relationship here where now guest and member and even admin can all extend customer. And with customer, we are actually going to, whoops. So we get to reuse this logic now, right? Cool. And then member is going to have an instance of account inside of its class. So this is called composition. So composition is when has a relationship, right? So A has a relationship of B. So member has an account. So this is how we're kind of using some of these concepts, these OOP concepts in our OOP interview. So cool. And so what can a member do? We said a member, the only difference is that they can actually place the order, right? So now we have this really nice segmented code. Every class has its responsibility. There's a lot of reusability being used here. We're not actually worried about duplicating code or anything like that. So this is a great example. Cool. And then for admin will have an account. It's a regular person, but they're going to have a couple special features, such as being able to block a user. Maybe we should add a new product category, and maybe even remove product category. And again, this isn't, like fully fleshed out. We're kind of just giving high level views of each, like what the responsibilities of each one of these classes would be. Okay, so now coming back to our customer class here, it has this instance of a shopping cart, right? So it has this method get shopping cart. So this tells us that there's some shopping cart class that we now need to think of. And so with the shopping cart, we can kind of think about this in different ways. So a shopping cart is going to have a bunch of items in it, right? But each item is actually a product, right? So it's just a list of items. So that's what this is essentially going to be, is just items in here, and it's going to be a list of this item class. And we'll talk about why we want to break this up, having item in a moment. Cool. So shopping cart, right, has a list of items in it, as well as the ability to add an item or remove an item. Or get items, right? Okay, and so this is our shopping cart. So let's see, we have a quick question here. What would be the impact to your entity class diagram if guests are allowed to check out? So the impact would just be, we're now creating these, empty objects of instances of account that don't necessarily need to be there. So, and it's not, are you saying, so if the guests were allowed to check out? So that's really no impact. Like we could treat it the same. We can just, have them type in an email. You don't need to necessarily collect like account information. This is just what Amazon implemented. So we didn't make up this constraint. This is actually Amazon's, the way they currently handle their system. So again, it's a great question though. I think it's something, if you were curious about it, you could explore, what that would look like if, guests were actually allowed to. And if a guest was allowed to in this instance, then we wouldn't need to create this, guest and member class. We would just have this customer class that would have an instance of account class and can just do the same things in both. So place an order and potentially even register, have both those functions in there. So cool. And then how would you program persistence in your app? So right at this point, we're not too worried about the infrastructure or what type of database we're using. Again, it depends on the role that you are applying for, and it depends on what the ask of your interviewer is. But primarily, this is just more of a high level entity diagram. Like if this was a system design and they were asking you that, then that would be a little different. But for this one, we're just worried about relationships between the different entities within our system. So cool. All right, so back to our shopping cart. So now we have the shopping cart. And the shopping cart also is using composition to the customer. So the customer has an instance of shopping cart inside it. So now we have this item, right? And so we'll kind of get to why we're doing this in a minute. And so item is going to be pretty generic. It's just going to have a quantity and a price. And then we're just going to have an update quantity method here. And now this is where we're going to start using some UML conventions here. And we're going to create a cardinality between shopping cart and item. And so the cardinality here would be one to many, right? So each item will at most belong to one shopping cart. And this is how you avoid having, if person A has, the last item in their cart, person B can't just take it from their cart. It's in person A's cart. So, but you can have, if there's, not just one left and there's, 100 left, then you can have multiple multiple items in your shopping cart. So that's what we call that the cardinality here of one to many. And same thing with customer and shopping cart, right? This can only ever be, the shopping cart can only belong to one customer. You're not going to share the same shopping cart with different customer accounts. So that is a one-to-one there. Cool. And so now we have this item, but what is an item? We said the item is the representation of a product, right? It's just the quantity of it. So this needs to relate to some type of product, right? And so this product, this is where you're going to have a lot of this meta information, the name. You're going to have description. You can also keep the price in here as well. You'll have some product ID in here as well. And that's really how we're relating these two with item and product here. Product ID, we're going to have, the category. Sorry, it's getting small here. And this is actually going to be of type product category. So it's similar to using, we're going to create a product category class. And this is a similar example of composition, but it's called belongs to, which is essentially composition. So what we're saying is we're just going to instantiate a product category instance within this product class. So we haven't designed that yet, but we will design that next. So we have category, and then we have, maybe available items in here. And then for our methods, all we're going to have is get available count. Oops. So cool. And so really quickly, we're going to relate product and item we're going to use that cardinality terminology again. And this is where we say, right, so let's say you have a pen. So a pen is the product, but if you have 10 pens, each one of those pens is an item. So this is a one-to-many relationship as well, right? So each item belongs to some type of product. And then we can create this product category class. It's going to be very light. We're going to have some type of name, description, right? And some product cat ID here. So all we're saying is that belongs to B. So we're saying that this product category belongs to this product. Cool. And then really quickly to kind of get this whole, if we're going back to our classes here, we did user, admin, product category, shopping cart. So now let's go to orders, since that's relevant to our current flow. So we have this order class, right? And what do we need here? We need some type of order number for your records. We need some type of status, right? Some order status. And again, this is where the enum comes in place. You can do, you know, I don't know, shipped or, you know, pending, etc. Right? You have different types. So you can make this a type. Order status. And again, there's multiple ways to go about this. You know, you can do things however you see fit, or, you know, whatever comes naturally to you. You just need to be able to explain and communicate the reasoning why you decided to do something. So this is just, you know, the particular flow that I'm going with right now. So yes, good question. Somebody asked, isn't the price and item and product duplicated data? It is duplicated data, but this is why we would want, it's like, you're gonna have to make some sacrifices. And so the reason why we want this duplicated data here is because not only item is being reused a ton, right? So it's being used in product because we need to know what the price of the product is, right? And let's say, you know, you can make an argument where you're saying the product price is, you know, the original price is this, but maybe you have some type of, you know, promotion or whatever, then you can just change each item price. And so there's some arguments there. But the reason why we have some duplication here as well is because item is being used by, it's going to be being used by 3 different classes. So 3 different classes are going to reference this item class. And so order is going to be the last one to reference it. So we have order date, right? And then we would do like process shipping as like the function. And again, we're going to have a relationship here. And what's the relationship? What's the cardinality between item and order? Right? You can have many items per one order. And then we are going to have an instance. So we're going to use composition here again, where customer is now going to have an instance of this order class. So it's going to have an instance of shopping cart and have an instance of order. And member or guest is going to extend this customer, right? So cool. So once the guest registers, it'll actually be able to use this information. All right. And so really quickly, now let's go back to our, so we did orders. Now let's quickly do some payment information here. I will move this over, move this like over here somewhere. So for payments, so we can do some type of credit card, right? Some type of bank account. Awesome. And so for a credit card, you're gonna have, right, name on the card. You're gonna have the card number. You're gonna have some type of code, right? The 3-digit code and a billing address, which type address that we had over here. So we can do, so again, already some more examples of reusability with our data types. And so how we're going to relate this to account, we're going to actually create an instance here, again, composition. And so we're going to generate a list of credit cards. So now in account, there's going to be an instance of credit card in a list form. So same thing with bank account, right? You can have multiple bank accounts associated to your account. So with the bank account, you need some type of, routing number. You need your account number, and you're going to need your bank name, even though the routing number, you'll know what bank is by the routing number, but if you want to give it some type of nickname or something. And again, we're just going to use, you can have a list of bank accounts associated to this account class here. Cool. And then how these are going to work to actually process each payment is there's probably some service here. Bank service and some credit card service. So like MasterCard, or maybe using Stripe or Visa, they all have their own, on and off ramps for processing their credit card transactions. So you can kind of just, black box these. You can just generically say, this is, using, same thing here. So you can say, the bank transaction, the bank service. The arrow in UML is just representing that they can call each other. So credit card can call the credit service can use the credit card. Cool. And so that would handle, payment. So now shipment. All right, so for shipment, we have this, or actually, sorry, missing one more thing for payment. I was like, that doesn't look exactly right. So each one of these services is going to have to interact with this general payment class. So this is the last piece we're missing here, which is going to have some type of status, right? Did your payment go through? Was it denied? Did, overdraft something? So some type of error there, or success. So some type of status. And then we need to keep track of the amount, right? So this is like a double here. This is some type of, you can again create some type of enum and call that payment status. We would have this like process payment method here. And so since the bank surface is going to be, they can use each other on the credit card, and the different services. These are both actually going to, oops, let's just connect those here. These are going to extend this payment class. So the reason why is that now you can have a credit card, credit card service extends payment. So something is keeping track of, what type of transaction was it? What's the amount? What's the status for each type of different payment methods that you have. Awesome. And then payment will also relate to order, and the cardinality there would be 1-to-1, right? So we would have one payment per order and vice versa. Cool. And then we got about 4 minutes here. So if we wanted to ship, we would have this shipping class, right? So this would have some type of shipping or ship date here, maybe some type of estimated arrival, maybe even the shipping method. These are properties. And so then you can have, whatever log shipping info. And so then the relationship with shipping would be with order, right? And so this is basically saying you cannot have shipping. This is unidirectional. So they're saying you cannot have A without B. So you can't have shipping without order here. Like you need order to be existent. And so this would be a one-of-one relationship as well. Cool. Now we have shipment. Okay, so far we handled all the classes that we talked about. Coming back here, users should be able to search for an item. So this is obviously a very important one as well. So we will quickly do that actually. So we would have some type of like search interface here, which you would have two types of search methods. You would have either a search by product or search by category. And so you can kind of, create this generic interface that's going to get implemented by some type of catalog. So, and all the catalog is what houses all of the categories, right? So each product belongs to a product category. Each product category is encased and housed in some type of catalog. That's explanation there. And so all this is going to do is implement, because it's an interface. And catalog is actually going to have like product names, product categories, and this is going to be some type of a map, right, of like a string with like a list of products. And same thing here, this is going to be a map with a string, the list of product categories, or with the list of products as well. Just defined by the product category. And then you would have the name of whichever catalog that you have here. Cool. And then the product and product category. So this is actually, we're not going to fill this in because it's not composition. It's instead it's using aggregation. So there will be many, products within this catalog. And so a product can also belong to different categories or different catalogs. So, you could have the, home catalog, you could have, whatever last season, whatever, however you want to describe it, but a product can belong to many catalogs, and the catalog will have many instances of product. So now that we have the search, cool, that satisfies this condition here. And then we have add items to a cart. We talked about that, modifying items, shipping info, payment, select shipping preference. We talked about the shipping. We didn't really get into, being able to select the different types. If the user is a member, check out. We have that in our guests, our register right here. So we talked about that. We talked about adding a product. Customer support, we didn't really get to. We talked about admin, so we'll throw a little asterisk there. Remove a product, add a product category. Reviews, so really quickly, let's talk about that. And then order history, we have the orders tied to the account and register. So just to really wrap this all up, if we did a product review down here, really simple, right? You have some type of rating, some type of int here, and then you would have the review, which is a string, and then maybe some type of method that's like get rating or something. And so this is also related to product, but as well as this is actually related to an account as well. So this is why in the beginning we had this add product review, because we have to have some account that's tied to this product review. We can't just let anybody write product reviews. So this is, I think that satisfies our initial use cases that we had talked about. And again, this was, you were hearing me talk through the whole time. You would be asking questions during this whole interview. And then to sum it up, we'll define our requirements and use cases. Like I said, 5 to 10 minutes. Define your MVP, which is a subset. That was kind of cutting it close, right? There were I went over a little over, like 3 minutes or so. So you could even cut that down a little further and then always add on later. So, and this is where I have this little, asterisk here, a star, reflections. So talk about my future use cases or optimizations of what I would do differently. And so then I would recognize the fact that, okay, maybe I, highlighted too many use cases. So I'd probably trim that down a bit and then, create a narrow set. And then if I had time, go back and just add, like have a priority of the different use cases that I would implement. So yeah, so again, summarize, define your requirements and use cases. Try not to spend too much time here. This can be very easily, the part that you are more comfortable with, because it's like you can just start talking about all the different, experiences and different paths that you can go down. So really try to make sure you're cognizant of keeping that 5 to 10 minutes. The class diagram, ERD, entity relationship diagram, use your object-oriented principle concepts, use solid principles, dry principles. So those are kind of, in summary, what I would try to remember during your object-oriented design interviews. And as you can see, this ERD here is very, I think someone said, would it be strange for an interviewee to do the modeling using a NoSQL database? for example, Cassandra, where they would use a query nested instead of entities or instead of by entities. So again, there's really no one right answer. Like Amazon has a relationship, like a relationship, like entities are, it's like a relational database. If you could make an argument, you can explain why you are using your NoSQL schema, and it makes sense, and everything can be, you found a way to relate everything, in a sense, right? Like where you can get the information that you need, then go for it. I think you might want to think about, what would be the more efficient way, or maybe the more like scalable. Even though we're not, we weren't asked about scalability, but just in your own head. Like I said, they're really just more curious on what your thought process is. Are you able to narrow down, this very vague question, and do you understand just basic OOP concepts and how things relate to each other? So, like I said, this is just doing it this way. This isn't the only way. You could do it multiple different ways. You just need to make sure that you can explain why you are doing it the way that you decide to do it. So, because if they ask you, "Oh, that's interesting. Why did you do that?" and you say, "Oh, I don't know," like doesn't show the confidence. So, just make sure that you're having this dialogue and this conversation back and forth. And then we have another question. So what sketchbook am I using, or is there similar whiteboard tools for OOD? So yeah, so I'm actually using it's called Paper for the iPad. And this is obviously not everybody's going to have different types of technology. This is very easy for me for demonstrating purposes, and obviously draw this out this way. You can do it by like pseudocoding. So that was one thing that I do want to mention is every object-oriented design interview is different. I've had interviews where I had to create the use cases and also create the APIs and what the response is and the payloads, from a full front end to the back end, what the schema looks like. And so I've had that interview where I wasn't necessarily talking about infrastructure. Like they didn't ask me about load balancing and caching and those kind of things, or response times. They just wanted to see the full path, because I have a full stack role. I've also had interviews where they strictly only wanted me to do something like this, where they just wanted to know what the entities were, and was I able to come up with these use cases and kind of follow some type of process, and could they follow along, and was I able to explain the reason why I was doing these things. So this is achievable without having to draw on a whiteboard or use an iPad. I know there's like Jamboard or some of those other, like Google has like some free ones that you could use your mouse or get some type of sketch pad if that's something that you're interested in doing. But I do want to say you can achieve this also using like a code interview, or any type of text editor where you're just basically doing the same thing. Like where I said all those compositions, so all of these guys, you would just actually reference the instance of account in this member, right? So you could have like class, member, extends customer, right? And then create this like account, something like that, right? Like private, whatever. And then however you wanted to do it. And that's like, you can do it in code as well. Like you don't need to just do it like with this type of like sketching or some type of pad like this, but cool. And then, so I'll go back to summary here. So yeah, so let's see, another question here. So at what engineering levels are object-oriented design interviews typically used? Entry level or more senior staff level? So in the beginning, I kind of touched on this a little bit. It varies. It depends. They could give. I would say it's more common in like the more mid to senior level positions, as well as I've had friends who've told me that they've gotten this type of question. Maybe they weren't expecting you to get as in depth with like a UML and ERD, but it's just something they just want to know how you think and how you break down this process. So, but to give you more like a definitive answer, I would say it kind of varies on the company that you're applying, who your interviewer is. But I would expect to see this more at that senior to like more mid-level engineering level. So, as well as once you get to that senior level, then they'll start talking about system design, which is very similar to the OOD in the sense of when the system design interview, you're doing the same thing. You're getting your use cases, you're creating your diagram, but then you have to worry about two other factors, which is the constraints that they're giving you. So like as far as like response times and latency and those kind of things, as well as scalability. So that's where you're talking about, infrastructure and like putting things behind load balancing and caching certain data and putting images maybe in one place, sharding and all these other things. So, but that's out of the scope of this interview here. Cool. Yeah, I don't see any other questions, but if anybody has any, feel free to ask. If not, then hope you all enjoyed this presentation. You are all very welcome. And I hope to see you all in the Alco curriculum, because it's pretty fun. So can you please share the link or stuff? Yes. So I do believe that the recordings will be made public. Richie, can you verify that this will be available, or like how far or how soon after would this
Yeah,
be
so
available?
we're gonna be putting this up by tomorrow. So if you want to check our Alco YouTube channel, I dropped the link a little bit earlier in the event, but I'll go ahead and drop it in there right now as well. Just be on the lookout for the recording there. You can actually take a look at not just today's session, but also all of our past events. So I'll just drop this link here in the chat for everybody. Yeah, and we hope to see you at an Outco info session. The poll is still running. We're going to be signing off here in just a little bit, but just wanted to make sure to thank everybody for their time. Thank you so much for staying with us, and wish you the best of luck in your job search endeavors. Thank you, and have a great evening.
See
Bye.
everybody.